Hi, welcome to the Ladies One-on-One. I'm Jana, your host for today, and I want to thank you so much for joining us for season 3. Yes, we're at season 3 already. You may remember that last season, in season 2, we introduced Ladies One-on-One as a new platform where we get to spend extra time with special guests, whether they be artists, whether they be people who have special jobs, or whether they have a journey, a life journey that someone can be impacted by, that someone can find inspiration in, and that we can all learn a lot more about life from. So I'm excited today to introduce my special guest. She has a beautiful musical name, Mireille Sine. I want to say that one more time. Mireille Sine. And she is a trail runner, a road runner, a marathoner. She has a distinct honor of having been named the very first Trail Running Magazine ambassador by Trail Running Magazine in February of this year. We'll learn a bit more about that in just a few minutes. She's a former high school track and field athlete. She is a grad student in public health, and she's an advocate of trail and road running as vehicles to maintaining optimum health. Welcome, Mireille.
Thank you.
I'm glad to finally have you here in studio with us.
Thanks for having me.
I'm looking forward to everything that I'm going to learn from you. I've been a little bit scared about running. I can do extra striding, but that's about it. So maybe you can kind of motivate me to give it a try.
Yeah,
right?
I'd love to.
All right. I want to ask you, when you were a little girl, did you have a best friend?
I had two best friends in middle school, actually, Rachel and Juliana. We went to middle school right over on Wilshire, kind of in the central LA. And yeah, we met each other in 6th grade. We ended up going to different high schools, unfortunately, but we still, kept that friendship going. And now in our own adulthood, we still keep in touch here and there, but we're not as close as we used to be. But when I think of first best friends, it would definitely be those two.
So back in those days, were there any particular things that you little ladies like to do together?
We went to the mall a lot.
Did you have a favorite store?
Where didn't we go? We would actually go to Barnes and Noble a lot and read those little teen magazines.
Yes.
Try to eat at the Cheesecake Factory or just walking around the mall because it was literally right down the street from our middle school, so it wasn't that far to get to. But yeah, it was just a lot of walking around, window shopping, but just having fun together.
Well, as you grew up, to the degree that you were able to stay in touch, who had a boyfriend first?
Good question. That was a long time ago. Rachel? I think Rachel.
She did?
Yeah.
Who was, of the three of you, who was the most studious?
Oh, all of us. We were definitely. No, that's not even an exaggeration. If you went to our school, there was no playing around. So we all are really smart in our own ways. So
you kept each other on task.
Yes, yeah.
You didn't distract each other, right?
No.
I read in the article that you're originally from Cameroon.
Yeah.
Yes. I wanted to know, if I took a trip there for the first time, what would you most like to show me?
I feel like such a tough question. I would probably, my fondest memory of being there was the house we grew up in. So I'd probably be there because it's the one place that I remember the most distinctly. I did have a chance to visit a couple years ago, and it was seeing everything for the first time still.
Yes.
But once we got to the house, I was oh, okay, now I know where we are.
Did anything in particular make it special? Was it in the city? Was it more in what we would call the suburbs, or?
It was not in the city. Definitely more village. But when we were there, we were surprised because my baby bassinet was still in the house.
Wow.
So yeah.
Parents just don't give something up.
It was so awesome. You can't. No one remembers being that small, but to see it and then see where I am now, it was crazy.
That was me.
Yeah, yeah. I fit in this.
Goodness. Yes, I fit there. My goodness. Well, what introduced you or attracted you later on down the road in your life journey? What introduced or attracted you to trail running?
For trail running specifically, I had done road running for a few years already. And when I decided that I would try trail running, I think I'd done 4 marathons, I want to say.
4.
Something. I think, I had some distance and some time under my belt before I made that decision. And I was attracted to it because I wanted to get off the road a little bit. And trail running is different in the sense that you are running like on the mountains and different trails and things like that. It's challenging in its own ways, but it's also kind of freeing because you're out in nature as opposed to maybe like running through the city and running through parks and things like that. So I wanted the challenge of the terrain, but also to challenge myself distance wise because I started running a little further than marathons when I did trails. So I did like ultra marathons on there. Yeah.
Okay. Did your background in as a track athlete, how did that prepare you or not be related to leading you into doing further distances with challenges that are totally different?
It's funny because they're almost not related in a sense. I got into track and field in high school because I wanted to be with my friends, number one. I didn't want to do the regular PE classes anymore. But back then, you would not catch me running more than 3 miles. I was strictly just sprinting or hurdles. Right. And the thought of even having to run more than needed to was not right. like achievable for me. So I definitely was a short distance person, and I thought that's what I was like gonna keep doing. But I know distance caught my eye once I left college and I moved back to LA, joining some different run clubs and things like that, and just seeing everybody like putting like 10 miles on a Saturday and things like that. So, yeah.
When you reflect on your first trail run, share with us what was that like?
My first trail run. It was fun, but I remember it did take a lot of getting used to. Going back to the terrain again, you were constantly climbing and descending. So I had the notion that, trail runners, you're running the whole time. And that just wasn't true. So I've learned that like you're not really running up the hills depending on how competitive you are and where you are in your training, but a lot of the times it actually involves a lot of speed hiking alternating with running.
Okay.
So I think my first trail run, I was just trying to get used to the terrain, but also you had to let go of ego a little bit and say to yourself like I don't have to sprint up the hill. I just have to get to the next point.
Okay.
So yeah.
That's interesting because you said it's a combination of speed hiking.
Right. Power hiking, we call it.
Power hiking and running.
Right.
So I would think that your first objective would to be to master and be comfortable with the power hiking part of it?
Yes. Getting used to the fact that you're not going to be running continuously.
Okay.
Yeah.
What particulars do you have to keep in mind, or how do you train as a power hiker?
I would say keep getting on the hills. Kind of watch where your body is in space when you're on a hill, as if you're like leaning too far forward, leaning too far back, because one thing you want to avoid, you don't want to be a brake for yourself, whether you're going up or downhill. So you want to kind of go with the momentum so that if you are to fall, you're falling forward, number one, but that you're just not overexerting yourself, because you can see some people where they'll try to run up the hill, and the key is like if you are running as fast as someone is hiking up the hill, you're putting in way too much effort. At that point, you just might as well like fall back and hike before you can run again. So that's a good gauge too. If you have others around you and they're also maybe struggling going up, then that's a cue for you to tell you like to slow down. And heart rate too is another factor. So if you notice if you have a watch, or if you just can feel it in your chest going a little too hard, then that's when you know you have to.
You know that you don't have to.
Yeah.
You don't have to come out of it speed first.
Right.
It's something that you have to be consistent with and work at over time.
Yeah.
So when you got to the point where you felt like, okay, I think I've got this. I think I feel comfortable with it. I want to proceed to integrate it into my life care. How long a period of time would you say that was, Mireille?
Until I integrated the
Yeah,
trail
like
running.
until you said, okay, I've gotten used to it. You know, I can feel it in my body the way I need to know I'm doing it as properly as I can. How long would you say from the time you started doing it to when you felt that way?
I would say a few months, maybe 2.5 to 3 months. In the beginning, there was a lot of falling like on the trails, because getting used to just picking up my feet and like being around rocks and roots and things like that. So I had to let myself fall literally, just to let me know that it was just part of the experience. So about 2.5 months in, I think, is when I started to feel more comfortable on the trails, and just trusting myself to navigate them better. Because in the beginning, it was a lot of like, you know, looking at a map and trying to figure out what connects to where and trying to guess a distance. And then when I was running over like my favorite trails over and over again, then it just got more freeing, because I know I didn't have to worry about where I was going next. I already knew what was next.
Knew what was gonna happen. Was there any particular person or organization that was instrumental in guiding you into developing these skills, and with that came your love of doing it and your passion for it, I'm sure. Was there any person or group that kind of mentored you when you were starting?
I'm a part of a run group. It's called Blacklist LA. I think we are still the largest running organization in Los Angeles. So I started running with them December of 2016, I want to say. And that's the first group that I actually started training with, as opposed to just going out and running. So we would have training plans as a group, as we would train for a half marathon or a full marathon. And then through them, meeting other people that did run trails. And then so that's how I met people that were able to like answer my beginner questions, things like that. So Blacklist LA is probably like a fundamental part of my development as a runner. And my coach who created the group is also a fundamental part as well. He still coaches me till today.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you before we go to our first break. I read in your information you've done, I think, 4 marathons. 7 now. 7 now. You did one recently.
Yes, this past Sunday.
Where were you?
I was in Sacramento.
And what was that like, and how did it go?
Whew. The thing about the marathon is that you learn something each and every time you do it. None of my 7 marathons have gone exactly the same. So it's kind of like you keep progressing and learning as a runner, but then at the end of the marathon, you just go back to square one, and you're like, all right, well, I guess there's more to do, and there's always more to do.
Do you run for time, or do you run to just complete at what you feel your best is?
Currently, my focus is time and getting a PR, which is a personal record. So this past Sunday, I ran it in 4 hours and 28 minutes. And my first ever marathon was 4 hours and 54 minutes. So I've cut it down about 26 minutes. Yeah. Yeah.
That's good. I see that smile on your face. That felt good, didn't it?
It did. It was a shock, but I'm so glad I finally broke that barrier.
Little by little, consistency and focus, right?
Yes.
We're going to take a break because there's so much more I'd like to share with you all out there about this young lady and trail running and road running and how that feeds into maintaining optimum health for ourselves. There's a health challenge that I'd like for her to share with you, and it might touch or impact somebody's life amongst our audience who's watching. So on that note, we will be right back. Don't forget to like, to share, and to subscribe. And also, when you subscribe, click on that little bell that you see. That's a notification bell. That lets you know when our next show is going to be available for you to view. And we will see you back here in just a few minutes. Welcome back to the Ladies One-on-One. I'm Jonna, your host today. And we've been talking with a wonderful young lady. She has me looking at power walking, power hiking, and running, whether it's trail running or road running, in a totally different way, because I have shied away from both of them most of my life. So who knows, by the time this interview is done, I'll be going out and getting some new shoes and finding an organization or a person that can help me develop the skills that you need to do both of these sports. She is a trail runner, a road runner. She has completed 7 marathons. This past February, she was chosen by Trail Runner magazine as their very first trail running ambassador. And we're going to chat about that a little bit more. And also, she's a grad student in public health. But most of all, she's an advocate of how this particular exercise activity, this particular sport, I'm going to call it, is a way to maintain optimum health. It's a way to be healthy without going into the gym, without doing all the other things that people do and say, this has to be it, this is the only way. This is something as new as different, and you get to be out in nature, get a little vitamin D on your face, and I want to know more about this. So what I want to ask you is, you've touched, Mireille, about how trail running and road running are different. What would you say are the biggest mistakes that beginning runners make because they don't have a structured training regimen? They're trying to do it on their own or read articles or listen to what other people have told them, but they don't want to get into anything that kind of focuses them in and develops their skills.
Right. One mistake you will see often is people doing too much too soon because they don't quite know how to structure their miles yet. That's one mistake. Another one is people think that every run has to be fast, and that's just not the case. Okay. Once you learn a little bit more, you find out that 60-70% of your workout that week is easy running, and maybe 10 to 15 is like a speed workout or a long run. But those are the 2 common mistakes I see. People are going out and making every run super fast, trying to beat their time from yesterday, or they're just putting on too much too soon.
Is that the same for the part of it that you shared in our first segment about power hiking? Do people have a tendency to feel like they have to go a fast distance or a very long distance to kind of show that they're interested or that they're doing it? And what could be some of the consequences of that? Like, are there injuries that can be incurred?
Definitely.
From that?
Definitely. Some people also get it in their head that, they're not a runner until they do a marathon, and that's simply not the case. There's so many other distances, from the 5K to an ultra and everything in between, that people they get stuck on this word runner and equate it to the marathon, and that's not the case. Like, if you get out your front door in the morning or whenever you run, you're a runner. That's simple as that. Okay. And yes, injuries will happen because of the 2 factors that I listed earlier. Because again, people don't quite take the time to know their bodies, or they don't give it enough time to rest and adapt, kind of thing. And so you get a lot of overuse injuries. You get a lot of avoidable injuries, really. Everything from the hips down to the feet, just people because they may be excited, which is good, but sometimes you got to know how to rein it back in and do it right.
How important, because I know form is important in any sport, sport that's specific, how important is posture, and how difficult is that to learn and develop as a skill?
It's very important because that equates to how your energy is being produced, number one, and that equates to how much pounding your body can also take. So if you go the road running route, road running is basically, or running in general, is basically hopping on one foot at a time. Okay. If you think of it that way, just imagine putting your entire body weight on one leg at one time over and over again. That's enough cause for injury right there. So you really got to get into your head to align not just your top part, but also your legs. Like, are you, again, running as if you're braking and you're leaning back this way, or are you running forward and you're accelerating to the point where you may almost fall over, but you're not? because you're standing tall, but you also have that slight lean. And the same thing on the trails. When people get to like a downhill section, they see it as kind of a free-for-all, where they just want to like get down and tumble faster. But there's also a way to control that. If you're extending your legs far too wide when you're going downhill, you might just wipe out completely. So you always want to keep your feet underneath you as well.
That's interesting. I never did know that. Is that the same, or is that similar in power hiking as well? Or how would that alignment factor be different or the same?
It'd be a little different in the sense of you want to watch where your torso is when you're hiking in relation to the incline. You want it to lean just a little bit more, but not so much that you're causing injury to your back. But if you're too far extended, then you might just be expending more energy than you need. Okay. So it's always about finding that perfect balance.
Would you say, based on your experience, that running sports are more challenging for people later in life? Like, say, I'll just pick an arbitrary number, over 40.
No, I don't think so. Well, it depends kind of if you've been running your whole life. Are you talking about if you just started running at later in life, or if you've been doing it for a few years?
I would say if you're interested and you're just starting. But would you say that there's a point at which, depending on age, it would be more difficult to start and therefore stay with it?
I don't think there's a certain age that makes it difficult. You do get into personal things that's like, past history and things like that. But in the running community in LA that I've seen, we have people of all ages, and some people are picking it up later in life, and they just kind of take it at their own pace. That's the most important thing is, you're never don't ever try to keep up with somebody. But if you are going to pick it up, go at your own pace, and that's the safest way to do it.
If you were coaching somebody, are there specific things that you would discuss with them or include in their training that might be specific to, like, for instance, one of the things that older, more mature adults are challenged by a lot are hip injuries, hip replacements, knee replacements, right? All the cartilage related things. Is there an attention to that and somebody in our audience might be one of those people that they would say, well, I'd love to do it, but this is what has happened to my body. So how should I approach this? Or, is there anything I should read up on and study before I say, is this something you should really even try?
I'd say, well, number one, always consult with your doctor.
Right.
Number two, I would probably start them out on a run-walk method. You can do that by distance. You can do that by time. Maybe you're jogging 2 minutes, walking 1 minute until you get to your 3 mile mark or whatever your bench is that day. But if they are coming from things that ailed them in the past, then you definitely want to avoid just flat out running on their first try. Definitely do a proper warm up. That's always important. Whether that's jog a little bit, do some stretches beforehand, and then I would take them on a run walk method where their heart rate is getting up, but they do have a time and a place where they can stop and walk and let everything cool down and start back up again until we can work to making the running segments longer and the walking segments shorter, and then build that up to just trying to run consistently throughout.
That sounds like a plan.
Yeah,
definitely. Well, then how do you see trail running in particular as a tool for people who have either serious health issues like high blood pressure, like diabetes, like things like that, or who also have serious weight loss goals? Because a lot of people, when they exercise, especially at older ages, they're concerned about those things. They've been told that if they keep exercising, it'll bring their blood pressure down, it'll lower their blood sugars, or, oh yeah, that's the easiest way to lose weight. But then if they're carrying a lot of weight, they may not feel comfortable even giving it a try. How do you see this in particular, this activity, as something that people should take a second look at?
The thing about running is that it's actually a gateway to a lot of things. So people may get into it because they have all these goals that they want to achieve. But once you're in it, you realize, and that you figure out that it's something you want to keep doing, you realize that it's going to take a little bit more. So now you're trying to find ways to make your running easier. And those ways usually are, you're going to drink more water, you're going to eat better food, you're going to get more sleep. And without knowing it, and without knowing it, all those factors tie in together. And then that's where the health goals come in. And it's not just from the running at that point, because now you're doing all these things to make your running feel a little bit easier, but they're actually helping your overall goal.
I see. That makes total sense.
Yeah.
I'm going to take a little break right now because we want to talk about something that I really would love for you to share with everyone while we're talking about health, health challenges and things like that. So we'll be back in just a moment with Mireille Sine, and we're going to talk about, I want you to come back. And while you're away from us, click like, click subscribe, make your comments. If you have any questions for this young lady right here, she's very knowledgeable, as you can tell, easy to communicate with, and she has experience that she's more than happy to share with everybody out in our audience land here. So on that note, make sure though, when you subscribe, click on that little bell. That's a notification bell, and when it says set reminder, make sure to set your reminder so that when our next show is coming up, you'll know exactly when to tune in. And we'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back to the Ladies One-on-One. I'm Jonna, your host, and I'm talking today with a young lady, Mireille Sine. And she's an inspiring individual, and I think this segment will definitely punctuate why I say that. In addition to being a trail runner, a road runner, she's completed 7 marathons in her life. 7. That is an accomplishment. I'm serious. It is. And we definitely here on the Ladies Show, we applaud her very much for that. She's a grad student in public health. And she's also living in remission with lupus. And I wanted to, in our final segment, because we're talking about health, we're talking about how exercise and certain physical and athletic activities feed into maintaining the best health that we possibly can. But first I want to make sure, please like, please share, please subscribe. Make sure to click on the notification bell so that when our next show, or even this one, is going to air, you'll know when to fire it up so that you can join us, okay? Also leave your comments. Your comments are very important to us, and we read every single one. You never know when a topic or a guest might show up on the Ladies Talk Show or the Ladies One-on-One because of a comment that you've left. On that note, I want to ask you, you received a diagnosis of lupus while you were a student at Long Beach State University.
Correct.
Excellent university. 2 of my brothers attended and graduated from there. And I asked you during the break, what was that like for you initially?
To actually receive a diagnosis, that part was a relief, but it was the journey beforehand because it was about a year of not knowing what was going on. I'd say the symptoms got most aggressive that February of 2013. Just kind of like noticing I would wake up really achy in my joints. It'd take me about 20 minutes to get out of bed because I was so stiff. Once I got going, it was okay for a little bit, but by the time I got to campus, it was the same thing all over again, where like I had leg swelling and like just a lot of trouble walking and not knowing what to do. Of course, I was seeing like doctors here and there, had a lot of blood drawn, and they were pretty inconclusive. Until that summer, later in August, I was going again to the ER, but this time I noticed that my fingers were turning black, and we didn't know why. And I'd been to that same ER a few times, and they were just like, oh, we can't find anything, so we have to send you home. And once they saw my hand that day, they were like, okay, now we're going to admit you. So I was admitted that night, and I was put into the ICU actually for about a week or so, a week and a half. And it was through more testing, like finally being admitted, more blood testing, angiograms, all that stuff, that they were like, okay, you have lupus, and this is the diagnosis finally. Of course, didn't know what it was, I was, still in the hospital bed Googling what lupus was,
And what did you find out?
It's an autoimmune disorder. So if you break that down, autoimmune is just a term that means like your body's immune system attacks itself, attacks its own cells. And there's a lot of different autoimmune disorders out there. Lupus is one of them. It does affect women, primarily African Americans, followed by Hispanic women. And it shows up in a lot of different ways too. I think what made my diagnosis so hard to come by is that I didn't get the typical face rash that some people with lupus get. That it's called the butterfly rash. And that's a clear indicator that that's what lupus is. But mine was like in my blood and my joints a bit more so than like that you can tell from other parts of my body. So it can show up in different ways for different people. There's some people who are heavily affected by that. And I was one of those people in the beginning, but thankfully, I was able to fight through that a little bit better. So for me right now, being in remission, occasionally I may get like a flare or so, and that will look like either extreme fatigue or extreme awakeness for me. Those are the two that I've had. I have to watch out for things like if I fall, trying to track how long the bruising may take, because I have had stuff with my blood. So if my gums are bleeding like more than usual, like things like that to look out for. But yeah.
So how did, after you received that diagnosis and you came into a better understanding of what it was and what was happening to you in your life, how did your life change? What did you do next?
Well, I thought it was best at first just to follow doctor's orders and do what they said and take the medication that they said. And I was on a lot of different medications at the time, including like chemotherapy for 6 months, and then like chemotherapy in a pill and things to control like my blood clotting and things like that. But it was after like when I returned to school and I just couldn't take the effect that all the medication was having on me, especially like making me extra drowsy or harder to concentrate, harder to focus in school when I was supposed to be graduating at that time. So that got pushed back a little bit too. Yeah. So I started kind of taking the reins into my own hands by like first controlling like what I ate. So in the beginning I did have a lot of restrictions as to like the type of vitamins I could take, the type of greens I could take, and I kind of had to work with them in adjusting that, like, no, I know that eating, these vegetables and these fruits will help me feel better. So what can you guys do as far as like the medication to meet me halfway? So it was a lot of that, just a lot of telling the doctors that like, I don't think, this is working. We need to either cut this dose or just take this medication out completely. But I didn't run for a year or so. So that was really hard too. But also having the foresight that healthy eating and physical activity were probably my two best shot at feeling better myself. So once I cut down on a couple of the medications, I tried to run again. And for anyone that's ever taken a break from exercise, when you come back, it's the worst feeling ever. I couldn't even like run a mile and a half without like my legs being in pain or all that stuff. So it was a lot of like fighting tooth and nail to get back in. Yeah.
what really was the catalyst where you just said, I'm going to get back in, and whatever it takes, I'm getting back in?
Yeah.
What did that for you? Anything specific?
I think it's partly to do with just who I am as a person. Pretty self-determined, and just my inner goal getter, I'd like to say. So that definitely helped me not so much stay in that spiral of like, oh, why did this happen to me? It's more, I was trying to look at it as like, what can I do from this?
And you seem like you're also a person, you know your body and you know yourself.
Lupus will teach you that.
Yes, right. And so the final vote is always going to be yours.
Right.
Exactly. I mean, they try to help. They share with us what they've learned in school and what they've come to understand better as they've been in practice. But the bottom line is, if we don't know, then we can't help them.
Right.
We really, really can't.
Right.
In addition to your passion for running, what other hobbies or community activities or anything are you involved into?
I used to dance a lot. I still dance here and there with some friends as like hip hop and choreography, things like that. I would like to write blogs about, I usually write about running for like other people's blogs and things like that, but I would like to start my own in this next year. I did a lot of stuff with like branding this year, where there was working on a campaign with like a running brand or someone's own product and things like that. So all that stuff is pretty fun to me. So like the social media content type things is what is like all my passion project, like on the side stuff.
I understand that you've done some fundraising too.
I did, yeah.
What did you do?
My first one was in 2015 when I could run again. I did a fundraiser for Lupus LA, which is the largest lupus organization in SoCal. They have a few different chapters, but they were holding a 15K, which is about 9.3 miles on a beach run. And you had the option of doing a fundraiser. So I use it as like my getting back into running kind of chance. So I use that as a way to inform other people about lupus too. When I would post it on social media, it was usually like, oh, if you want to help with the donation, here's what you can do, but also here's a fact about lupus.
Exactly.
And that was my first fundraiser. And the last one that I did was when I again started trail running, and I was training for my first ultra marathon in the fall of 2018, and I fundraised for the ACLU. So,
okay.
Yeah.
You're busy.
I am.
Well, in that busyness, what is your favorite, if you have one, me time activity?
Lately, it's been watching funny videos online. Just kind of taking a mental break from schoolwork and all those things, just to laugh a little bit or just watch something mindless, as they say.
I call it mindless too.
Yeah.
It's mindless moments, right? And there's a lot of funny stuff out there.
Yes.
It's like, how did they do that? Why did they do that, right? Next year is the year of so many things.
Right.
But it's the year of one of my favorite things, and that's the Olympic Games.
Oh, yeah.
My husband and I live every 4 years. We just breathe for the next Olympic Games. Do you ever see yourself running in an Olympic Games event in the future?
I honestly do not. I don't. I love to be there. I think the Olympics is like, especially coming from the interactions I've had with different athletes that are professional runners already. A lot of those people, you have to understand, like, it's their job. So I try to think of it as like, oh, what would I have to give up to if I wanted for this dream to come true? But it hasn't. I haven't gotten to that point where it's like I'm willing to drop all of these just to focus on this one goal. My goal is always just longevity as a runner, and not so much making this like the Olympics my one big thing that I do, but like just small steps to get to my potential. Or
the Worlds or the Pan Americans. So the majority of the runners who participate in the Olympics are not amateurs?
No. A lot of them, they're actually starting training for the marathon qualifying times right now. So this last marathon that I did was the last time that people could get an Olympic qualifying time, and I, watching social media and again the athletes that I follow, and just being in the know of that, come February, we're going to see who's actually going to the Olympics, who's going to make the team. So a lot of those people they tend to be more of the elite athletes. They tend to be, the sponsored athletes, the one that have shoes behind them and clothing behind them.
Oh, they have all the endorsement type things and stuff like that. That makes sense.
The thing that has changed this year is that I've noticed that running has gotten so big that we saw a lot of stories this year of just like everyday people making these fast times. We saw full-time nurses, full-time teachers, and they were, bringing the heat among the elites too. So it's anybody's game at this point.
That's interesting to know. But I'm going to be looking out for a blog from you.
Okay.
If there's a blog, I know that our executive producer, your dad, is going to tell us what's going on with you, and I'll keep in touch with you as well, because I would love to follow you on that blog.
Oh, thank you.
It has been such a pleasure to have you here. I've learned a lot, honestly, and I appreciate you just being open and candid and sharing what you have with me and with our audience. And on that note, I want to remind our audience to please like and share and subscribe and click on the notification bell so that you will not miss one episode of the Ladies Talk Show or the Ladies One-on-One. We have an email address I'm going to give you now, because if you want to send us a question or a comment or something that you would like to share with our guest, Mireille Sine, bless her heart, she was here with us today, then you can email the.ladies.show3@gmail.com. That's the.ladies.show3@gmail.com. Also leave your comments, because your comments are important to us. We read every single one. And also, you never know where a ladies show topic discussion or a ladies one-on-one special guest and topic might come out of one of your topics. So till the next time, whatever you're doing, make it a great day. We'll see you again soon.